First of all, I can't imagine why anybody would want to be a college AD right now. I can't imagine that does not sound like fun at all.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the iCoaches Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Keith Adams, and on today's Throwdown Thursday edition, the last of what's been several weeks of just off-court, off-field issues and news. Next week, we'll turn it up and get you ready because we're 100 days out from college football season starting. But man, there's some things we need to talk about. And with me today to help us out is our favorite administrator, Robert Abney. Robert, before we dive in, because we're diving in, how you doing, man?
Living the dream as always, sir. You've got me talking about stuff. We tape fairly early in the morning. You got me talking about stuff that's going to make me think way too early in the morning.
All right, in segment one, Charlie Baker is asking for help. In segment two, we are going to talk a little bit about how yesterday's solutions lead to today's problems. And in segment three, for all you coaches and recruits out there, do stars really matter? But first, NCAA President Charlie Baker was at the ACC Meetings last week, and he talked a little bit about President Trump's proposed college sports commission. And Charlie Baker, to paraphrase, pretty much said he's up for anything, Robert. And the commission would more likely be of benefit if they could help Congress do something. President Baker also mentioned that he thinks the fact that the executive level is interested kind of makes things go, a little bit better for them. ACC commissioners and other commissioners believe that there is support for this because for anything to happen long-standing, long-term, you need congressional help because a lot of the bills that have been passed by states totally circumvent and supersede whatever the House decision is going to be.
Right.
Robert, we have talked about this and we will continue to talk about it until something happens, which is probably nothing. But what are your thoughts now that Charlie Baker, who was a career politician before he became NCAA president, is now leaning on the executive branch to assist the legislative branch in making some type of decision?
Well, I mean, yes, he's a career politician, and a lot of this is just like somebody save us, right? Because the NCAA keeps getting thumped in court. Public sentiment in terms of how things are going with NIL and the transfer portal and all of that stuff is not positive, and they know they've got to do something or they will no longer cease to exist, basically. And of course, they don't really have, I don't think anybody has any idea what to do, but if you're a politician and you have political connections and then Trump decides he's interested in trying to save college sports because he does love sports.
Yes.
And it's more because of the entertainment factor than anything else. But he does, always looking for the heat, but he does love sports. So I can see him being interested, at least promoting some conversations. I remain deeply skeptical that his intervention is going to get Congress to do anything, because Congress isn't really doing anything now. However, Trump has shown that he's willing to do things by executive order. Maybe that would work. I don't know. The guy he's casting about trying to find something to save him. And at the moment, this is definitely the best option.
Yeah, as we say about sports and the playoffs and things like this is complete chaos. And it's not going to change anytime soon. And what's going to change, though, Robert, in my opinion, is once we get back on the field, Very similar to being an administrator and doing summer work and so forth. Once the school year starts, you got school stuff to think about, and you're not going to have the time to think about all of this. When teams are winning and when teams are losing, it's going to magnify. So if the SEC once again controls the energy, you have to root for a Big 12 team. You have to root for an ACC team. You got to root for Clemson this year. If you want to change, somebody other than Big 10 SEC has to win for people to know that, see, spending all this money got you nothing. So we'll see how that works. But the second story in our A block, so to speak, is close to me. And again, that's why I'm glad I have you here. The University of Maryland has hired a new athletic director, and they went totally in a different direction, which is their right and their prerogative. So the selection of Atlanta Braves SVP of Business Strategy, Jim Smith, is the new athletic director of the University of Maryland. And it's kind of symbolizing the new set of skills people are looking for. Most of the finalists were senior business leaders and not people involved in education. This is now the new thing to do, is to hire somebody with business acumen, finding new sources of revenue, because quite frankly, donor fatigue is real. It's one thing to ask for you to help us build a new building. It's another thing to ask us for money every month to try to get, some swing guard or some center from some transfer place. So, Robert, you read a little bit about the bio of the new Maryland AD. You have been an athletic director. I have been an athletic director, and not a lick of education background. Any thoughts on that? Because again, it's Maryland's prerogative to hire whoever they want to. But man, wow, what do you think?
Well, the job of being first of all, I can't imagine why anybody would want to be a college AD right now. I can't imagine that does not sound like fun at all. But the job has changed. You're not administering a college athletics program. You are a fundraiser. And now, with colleges needing money every month for NIL, as opposed to just trying to, fundraise for a new gym or something like that, you've got to have people with business backgrounds, because they understand how that, I think, you're talking about private equity funding. You may or may not be talking about venture capitalist guys getting involved, and you need to have a business background to understand that and be able to manage that. And that's where we are, I guess. I wouldn't want that job, but I don't know, as the business guy, the business guys are not solving this problem. All the business guys are designed to do is trying to find them more money. That's it.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm glad you're here to help me out with this. I was close as a high school student athlete to my athletic director. He knew me, I knew him, and again, we're building this up. When I coached in college, the athletic director was very close to the student athletes, accessible. How you doing? It's more than just that superficial relationship. As I go to college campuses, as I'm coaching and you're meeting people and you're doing work, you see that. A very close friend of mine is a Division III athletic director now, and a very personable person, education background, but still trying to do the business thing. And the further you get up that chain, the more it becomes that corporate position. And how the kids doing? Because I'm still an educator in my head and in my heart, and that's usually the question that drives us every day, no matter what level you're on. Is how the kids doing? So the further we get away from that, the more I'm paused in terms of, yes, it's a new job. Yes, it's a new position. Yes, 20 million for this, 40 million for that. Can $44 million on a roster win you a national champion? These are things we've talked about, but man, every data point is a person. And I don't know if they're okay. And that's what's pausing me right now. Again, I wish to God the best. Maryland is literally spitting shoelace away from me. We root for it, but I don't know if this is going to work long term if you're making decisions this way. Any final thoughts before we close?
No, I agree. I agree with that idea that, I mean, this is definitely not, this is not a, he's not coming in and doing a 10-year plan for Maryland athletics. That's not what he's doing. What he's doing right now is, we need money, got to find it. That's what's happening right now.
All right. So, fans, when we get back in segment 2, yesterday's solutions lead to today's problems. We're going to talk football and basketball off-season building. We'll be right back on the Odd Coaches Podcast. Hi, everyone. Dr. Keith Adams here. And for over 30 years, I've dedicated my life to helping student athletes succeed, not just on the fields and the courts, but in the classroom and beyond. And that's why I founded the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project understands that finding the balance between academics and athletics is crucial for long-term success. That's why the CKA Save Project offers a range of programs, including personalized consulting, mentorship, and coming in 2027, our innovative Gap Year Basketball Academy, designed to assist both young men and women reach their full potential both on and off the court. I'm incredibly excited to announce that the CKA Save Project is now partnering with the Cascade Sports Network. This partnership will allow us the opportunity to amplify our message and reach even more student athletes through the Odd Coaches Podcast and other exciting initiatives. Join the CKA Save Project and the Cascade Sports Network as we empower the next generation of student athletes. Visit CKA on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org to learn more. Let's work together to find the balance and help unlock your potential. Welcome back to the Odd Coaches Podcast in segment 2. Yesterday's solutions lead to today's problems. So, Robert, donations for the Texas A&M 12th Man Foundation have drastically declined in the past year for some reason. So, after bringing in $120 million for the 2023 fiscal year, the number dropped to just under $96 million in 2024. And again, I think they're still paying Jimbo Fisher a couple of bucks. So this is not good for Texas A&M, but they're also poised to have a very good football season. What are you thinking about their approach and the fact that this money might dry up, possibly? I don't know. You're down there. What are you talking about?
I don't think the money will dry up. I think that, I mean, you're talking about, they're paying 76 million to get rid of Jimbo Fisher. And you're also talking about, that they don't have to pay the buyout for Buzz Williams, but they just had to go find a new coach. So they got to do all, I mean, Texas A&M, the Aggies think very highly of themselves. And my question always is, well, what have you won? The Aggies won a national championship when you could just say you were national champions in 1958 when Bear Bryant was the coach. Wow. Okay. So a long time ago. And since then, the Aggies haven't won anything. And they typically are 9-3, 8-4. That's typically what they are. And there's only so much money you can spend even some of these guys who have, I mean, these guys got a lot of money, but there's a cap to that. And apparently Texas A&M has found that. They have found the line that people are not willing to cross. And the funny thing about that is, and you know this, and I do, Jimbo sat out this last season. He's going to be back. He's going to be back, and he's still going to be getting his buyout, and he's going to get a coach's salary. Maybe not a head coach. Maybe go be somebody's offensive coordinator. But he's going to be
or the dreaded analyst position that you can steal good money with and get good seats.
Yep.
All right. So now let's talk about the University of North Carolina on the football field. North Carolina's football general manager, Mike Lombardi, said last week that the most disappointing thing about the college game that I've experienced is that players don't view contracts as binding. I come from a league where contracts are binding. We have 4 or 5 players signed in December before we got here that have already left without any hesitation. They're free to do that because the contracts are loosely written based on NIL. We as a league, the NCAA, and all conferences have to make players honor a contract when they put their John Hancock on it, just like I have to honor my contract. That's a part of life. That's the only disappointing thing. Robert, when you hear all of this contract talk from North Carolina football GM Mike Lombardi, what do you think, sir?
I know that, this is, we talk about sports here. We typically don't talk about movies, but what comes to mind is The Princess Bride, where Inigo Montoya is telling that guy, I don't think that word means what you think it means. What he's describing, those don't sound like contracts to me, because if they were contracts, they would be legally binding. And you and I know that these NIL things, they haven't figured that out yet. So you've got agreements, I don't know what they're calling them, but I'm not calling them contracts.
No, sirree, Bob. No. Okay. So now I want to go to UAB football, University of Alabama, Birmingham, and head coach Trent Dilfer. And he's breaking down how NIL dictates offensive and defensive schemes. And I found that interesting. He talked about one particular defensive scheme that you need a certain type of player to do and run that efficiently. And he can't afford that type of player. So he's got to get a cheaper player. So he has to run a different system. So although he understands what fans are looking for and so forth, he just quite frankly can't afford to play that way. So he has to play a more economical way of football. And I just found that fascinating. Robert, any thoughts on Trent Dilfer, like actually itemizing a budget and shopping at Costco as opposed to a specialty store for players?
Well, first of all, Trent Dilfer's kind of not a fan. Let's just leave it at that. Not a fan. That said, I think this is actually pretty insightful, because if you think about it, UAB is in Conference USA, the American. I can't remember. They're in I think one of the Group of Five.
Group of Five.
They're in one of the Group of Five conferences, and we know that when those guys get the kind of player that he's talking about, that he needs to run this defense, we know those guys typically don't stay very long, and they wind up going to a Power 5 school. So, I mean, maybe he's just saying the quiet part out loud. I don't know, but it makes a lot of sense to me that, coaches want to run their stuff, but you and I both know as former coaches that there are times when you have to adapt what you're trying to do to what you have at hand, because you can't make chicken salad out of chicken poop, and sometimes there just ain't a whole lot of chicken to work with.
And they're in the American, by the way. And oh, so true. Oh, so true. All right, finally, we're going to do college basketball. Green Bay's men's basketball coach, Doug Gottlieb, who does a lot. Doug's busy between the show and the coaching. I don't know how he does it, but what have you.
Mhm.
He wrote an article outlining how he's building next season's roster. With no general manager, our coaching staff has been game planning for the offseason long before it arrived. They have a strategy based on who they anticipated would hit the transfer portal. So, again, high school kids, college kids, coaches, listen to how this one team is building their roster. And I don't know if they're alone. Okay.
This one team that we might add that is in the summit.
Yes.
So they're in like it's a very
One bid.
middle of the road conference, one bid. Yep.
One bid. All right. So during the middle of last season, he sent two of his assistants on the road for 3 weeks during the season, might add, when they had a horrible season, to watch all the best junior college players in the country. First, they did exit interviews to figure out which players would stay. Gottlieb explained that schools like Green Bay, we lead the league in retention in order to be successful, and we didn't look to add a lot of high school kids. It's just too hard to compete in our league with a young roster. So we got to work in the portal, focusing on recruitment of three major groups: JUCO players, high-level D2 and D3 players, and players originally from Wisconsin who might be interested in coming back home. Each player they pursued also checked three additional boxes. They had to be tough, they had to come from winning programs, and they had to fit into our culture. We didn't want guys who routinely miss practice, smoke weed, or don't take school seriously. As former Green Bay coach and basketball lifer Dick Bennett once told him, the better the kid, the more they'll improve. And he's absolutely right. Robert, when you hear that from a team that grossly underperformed last year, can't think that's the only team thinking like that. You're out on the road sometimes with officials. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great concept for forming a roster. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Okay, who do we want to keep? Who's willing to stay? All right, these are the areas where we're going to focus to try and find guys to help us. Here's what we're looking for in these guys, and all of that is great. But you're right. If there are a lot of that's not an earth-shaking concept. He's not coming up with any new ideas. There's nothing revolutionary about that. It's just, that's what people are going to do. But if everybody who is in a mid-major is doing that, again, there's only so many players out there, and I think it kind of shows that, we've kind of heard this as a recurring theme. People are not looking for high school kids. They'll take the 5-star, they'll take the 5 stars, the top 100 kids, they'll take those guys. But other than that, people are not looking for high school kids. So where do those guys wind up?
Yeah, and I love the line that says, we can't win with guys like that in our league. And it's a one-bid league. So if they can't win with guys like that, what are we doing in the Big East, the ACC, the Big Ten? Man, it's just hard. And they're catching them on the back end from high-performing Division II and Division III guys, and they're looking for guys from winning programs. And I had a chance to meet and just speak very briefly with Coach Gottlieb at the Final Four, and it's very similar in thought of, if you're the best player on a horrible team, you've never learned how to win, and I don't have time to teach you winning things, so I'm going to pass and find the 5-point-a-guy game score on the winning team, and I'm going to bring him into my culture. So, yeah, because I don't know how you're going to feel getting 5 shots when you're used to 15. So, anyway, all right. So, in segment 3, fans, we're going to talk about those dadgum 5-star, 4-star recruits and see if they actually make a difference. We'll be right back on the iCoaches Podcast. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Keith Adams, and for years, I've witnessed the struggles student athletes face on how to truly balance the demands of academics and athletics. It's a question that I have dedicated my life to answering. That's why I wrote Finding the Balance, my personal journey to academic and athletic success. It's more than just a book. It is my personal journey, and it is filled with hard-earned lessons from decades as a coach, educator, and now president of the CKA Safe Project. Inside, you will find practical advice, real-life stories, and a clear roadmap to help student athletes, coaches, and parents navigate the complex world of balancing sports and education. And now I am thrilled to bring this message to a wider audience as a proud member of the Cascade Sports Network. We're partnering to amplify these crucial conversations about student athlete success. I believe every student athlete deserves the opportunity to reach their full potential, both on and off the court and the field. You can purchase your copy directly from our website at www.ckasafeproject.org. Join me and the Cascade Sports Network as we work together to help every student athlete succeed. Welcome back to the Odd Coaches Podcast in segment 3, a topic I love. Do stars matter? So on 3, which is an outstanding publication, Charles Powers analyzed why high-profile high school football powerhouses are producing 4- and 5-star recruits at a high rate, but greatly underperform when the NFL draft rolls around. Specifically, Powers studied blue chip prospects in the 2016 through 2021 recruiting cycles from ING Academy in Florida, Mater D in California, St. John's Bosco in California, St. Francis in Maryland, they're in Baltimore, Bishop Gorman from Vegas, Longville, Lakeland High School in Florida, Longville, Georgia, and St. John's College High School in Washington, D.C. Again, they're in the same conference as the DeMatha, where .5 goes. So from those schools, Robert, 44.8% of 5-star recruits are drafted into the NFL, while 18% of 4-star recruits hear their name called on draft day. So the figures are significantly below average for any of these 4 or 5-star prospects. 65% of all 5-star prospects were picked in the last 5 NFL drafts, while 23% of 4-star prospects were drafted. So a considerable chunk of these undrafted 5-star recruits come from these programs, and they just pick those. So at IMG, for example, they specialize in football. Some of these other programs don't have high-level basketball teams, making it difficult for prospects to play more than one sport. However, multi-sport participation correlated with the NFL draft, with 75% of early round picks having played multiple sports in high school. So when you see this kind of data, how do you react to it?
That sounds pretty damning in terms of the quality of the rating system, doesn't it? I mean, because the data, the numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. That's, 20%, the kids who come from those 8 schools, if they're a 4 or 5-star prospect, 20% fewer of them are getting drafted if they're 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of recent undrafted 5 stars, they came from those 8 schools. And I mean, to me, it seems like that's a couple of those kids are clearly overexposed, because the people who are awarding the stars, where do they go to look for kids? They go to these high level programs like these 8 programs. So if you play at one of those 8 programs, then chances are you're going to be given a high rating, which certainly bodes well for you to be able to go to college, which if that's what you're after, great. But we know that's not the current landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And so, these kids go, and hopefully these kids that aren't getting drafted are taking advantage and going to school. But we don't know that either. But again, I would agree with, the data, the biggest piece of data for me that kids miss, early round picks in the NFL, 75% of them are multi-sport athletes. And how many kids do we see across all sports who specialize and they
At 12.
and they only do, they're 12 years old. My kid's a baseball player. Your kid's 12. How do you know he's a baseball player? Because between now and the time he's 16, he might grow 8 inches and have a 40-inch vertical leap, but he's never played basketball. So now you've said, well, this kid who has basketball type body and skills, well, he's a baseball player. And this is a really interesting idea that you brought up, because we could go so many different directions on this.
Yeah, and this is something we're going to talk about. I live it right now. My son is a rising junior who is in the midst of this recruiting stuff, and throughout his career, he has had teammates in Pee Wee football play 60 games in a year, travel the country, miss school for exposure to what? We're both at the same school, and my son hadn't done half of this stuff, and burnout is a real thing. Academic burnout is a real thing. Okay, you should not take 5 AP classes. Okay, no, it's not necessary. Harvard will tell you we don't want professional test takers. Okay,
1, maybe 2.
yes, okay.
That's it.
So when you see things like this, and my wife's a track coach, and one of the things I have taken from track is run your own race. And I love PRs. I love personal best, and that's you. And if you look at this, and I think our female athletes do a better job of it than male athletes, and I talk about several female athletes in the Finding the Balance book. I want to be an aeronautical engineer. There's 60 schools in the country that have this, and I'm pretty good at field hockey and lacrosse. I'm going to see how far field hockey and lacrosse could take me so I can get this job later on. And yeah. But on the flip side, student athletes and their families pour so much into these rankings and ratings and traveling and so forth. And then at the end, we just told you in the last segment, they're not even looking at you. So why are you doing all this extra? So you're a marginal talent, and your grades can't get you into a school that you can grow, develop, whatever. So then at the end of this, you're done. And we didn't even mention injury. We didn't even mention, just you being 16, 17, making stupid mistakes, and then totally being washed out of this. So yeah, man, I think God bless the stars and so forth. But how are you doing? As we went back to segment 1, how are you doing socio-emotionally? How are you doing academically? How are you doing athletically? What path can we help you on? And that's one of the reasons why we're independent. And we have just such a conglomerate of people in our world that if you're interested in NIL, hey, we have somebody you can talk to. If you're interested in being in real estate, hey, we've got somebody you can talk to. If you're interested in whatever, hey, come on in and let's get some of this knowledge. Heck, if you are a marginal talent, but you want to be involved in sports, I got a guy that can talk to you about being a ref that can put change in your pocket right now. And you can go up the ranks and so forth. So, now, check us out, man. www.cksaveproject.org. Hit the contact button and let's have that conversation. Robert, wrap us up before we talk to the people about the Black Student Athletes Summit.
I love that your wife is a track coach. I was a track coach for a while. And it is amazing. Two things about that. First of all, it's amazing how much better athletes from other sports become at their sport when they run track. Number one. Number two, the thing about, talking about PRs, and that you learn a lot from that, because you learn that, you're looking for self-improvement. You're looking to better yourself. And sometimes, excuse me, sometimes you can run a PR. You can PR. I coached a girls 4x400 meter relay that they ran 4 flat. So the girls averaged 60 seconds, which is that's a pretty good girls 4x4 relay in high school. Set a school record by like 4 seconds. They were second because the team that beat them ran 3:59. You can't get mad. How can you just set a school record by 4 seconds? What are you going to get mad at? You can't get mad. That's a life lesson. That's a skill right there that you learn from, from track, and a skill that a lot of our kids would be better off if they would learn. Not that they have to learn it in track, but learning that skill. Sometimes you just get beat.
Yeah, and they're so product oriented and not process oriented, where in track you learn, you develop, you've got your training cycle, and then you have your meet. And in a lot of our other sports, it's so game, and not there's a skill set that you need to learn. We're going to work on this skill set for this amount of time, and we're going to assess you on that skill set. And if you're better at that skill set, you're going to win more likely than not. So, yeah, that's awesome. So this week, I'll be in Chicago at the Black Student Athlete Summit. I'll be presenting. My topic is, of course, finding the balance, navigating academic and athletic success. And the topic is going to address the seismic shifts in college athletics and how student athletes can still thrive in it. The Black Student Athlete Summit is a premier event uniting student athletes, athletic professionals, industry leaders. Again, in my topic, I'll be talking about NIL, transfer portal, and the academic pressures. And I'll also hopefully get student athletes and coaches to participate in our independent research study. It is so critical that we remain independent and try to help. So with student athletes, we're studying their motivation now with transfer portal, name, image, and likeness, all of these different things. What's still moving you to action? We're also asking their thoughts on collective bargaining because there's a lot of contract talks and not everybody understands contracts. So the best way to do it is ask. And then coaching. It is so difficult to coach. So let's ask coaches, how are you feeling with all of this right now? So then we can share this information on a wider scale and wait for it. Maybe some help can come and some increased understanding, some increased knowledge, and then we can have conversations to move everything forward as opposed to confrontation. So if you see me at the summit, please say hi. It's okay. I'll have CKA and OCP gear on, so you can't miss me. But it's an awesome experience. 10 years ago, I was at the Black Student Athlete Summit, the inaugural one in Texas, where I met Ricky Williams, and I'll close with this story. Ricky Williams, the Heisman Trophy running back, he was really into himself, understanding who he was, and he had walked away from football, and people similar to Dave Chappelle was like, why'd you do that? He told a story about he was in the Australian outback the first time somebody like complimented him on something other than athletics. And that stayed with him. He said, man, that was a really good point. That was really smart. And he was like, I was 27 years old the first time somebody said something in a complimentary fashion that had nothing to do with my ability to run the football. And that kind of stayed with me. So, with that, on behalf of our favorite administrator, Robert Abney, I'm Dr. Keith Adams saying thank you for listening and or watching the Odd Coaches podcast, also seen on the Cascade Sports Network. And we will see you on the sidelines. Until next time, take care.
The Odd Coaches podcast is sponsored by the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project is an industry leader in providing student athlete, academic, and athletic support. From assessing student athletes' academic and athletic skills, to measuring and monitoring student athlete academic progress, to improving student athlete time management and organizational skills, the CKA SAVE project provides wraparound services for student athletes from middle school through college. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by emailing cka@ckasaveproject.org. We hope you enjoyed today's show. The Odd Coaches podcast drops new episodes every Tuesday through Friday on most weeks. Make sure you subscribe to the Odd Coaches podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow the Odd Coaches podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Odd Coaches. Follow Dr. Adams on Twitter and Instagram at CKA Save Project. In addition, follow Coach Mike Francis on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Franchise, spelled Coach Franchize. For more information about the CKA Save Project, please visit them on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org. See you next time on the Odd Coaches Podcast.